Hey there, and welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast, where I'll be talking with a new guest each week, and we'll be covering topics in health, fitness, lifestyle, and so much more. So stick around and let's get into today's episode.
So I think also with Pisces is in terms of relationships, they can be so self-sacrificing. They're so caring. We sometimes find nurses and people in caretaking industries being the Pisceans.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, but they need to make sure they've got enough in reserve for themselves.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast. It has been a hot minute now, hasn't it? It's been, I think, 2 years since I have done this podcast, but I'm back and I am ready to, reboot the podcast, get some new guests on here. I'm quite excited for this brand new season 3. I have some amazing guests coming on, and I think is going to be a great season. Now, I have been on a hiatus, of course, for the last, again, 2 years. In these past 2 years, I, of course, been in Australia. I mean, I've been in Australia for 4 years now. Finished my master's degree, been working, just been quite crazy and quite busy. And unfortunately, the podcast has just kind of fallen through the cracks. It is quite difficult sometimes to manage and juggle guests and, interview people and this and that on top of a full-time job. But, other people do it. I love doing this, and it's just time to get back into it. I, unfortunately, I think it was 2-3 months ago now, had a little bit of a health emergency, was in hospital, had an emergency surgery, yada, yada, yada. I'm actually going to be speaking about this a little bit more in a later episode throughout the season. But yeah, it's just kind of the whole health scare has really opened my eyes, and it's really put a lot in perspective, both physically, financially, health, health, and it's just kind of put again things in perspective, hence why I'm back here. I again love doing this podcast. I love chatting with people, and it's just been a hot minute, so I thought, what better way, or what better time to do it, and here I am. So this season, I'm going to be chatting with numerous people. We're going to have business owners, astrologists. We're going to have theta healers on this podcast. We are going to have, fitness influencers, so many guests, really. And I'm just quite excited to chat and, again, give people kind of a safe outlet to chat about, various things in lifestyle and fitness and health, and just in the community. Now, this season is going to consist of about anywhere from 6 to 8 episodes. Haven't quite decided yet. Haven't recorded 8 yet, but I do have 6. And it is just going to span throughout a couple of months, basically. I think I'm going to be posting bi-weekly, so tune in there. Be sure to, again, subscribe to the podcast, and be sure to give it a 5-star review, because it definitely helps out the podcast, and it definitely shows love to all of the guests that have been on here and have opened up with their experiences and everything, really. All right, now today's introduction is going to be a bit shorter than usual. You all know that sometimes I can talk forever, but once again, I'm going to be getting into so many things during later episodes. Today's episode is a little bit longer, which I love. I love when guests kind of share their experience and their expertise, and that is what today's guest has done. And today's guest is Natasha Weber. Now, Natasha is astrologist. She is an award-winning astrologer. She does have a little segment on the morning show, which, if you are listening from other parts of the world, the morning show is a morning, basically, TV show here in Australia. She has been on radio shows. She has had a podcast in the past. Her episodes are still live, of course. She has a blog. She has an Instagram with over 7,500, or sorry, 75,000 followers. And she is just an extremely knowledgeable astrologer and very passionate in what she does. So let's get into today's episode. She is also going to introduce herself a little bit better than I have done right now. Let's get into it. Alrighty. So welcome, Natasha, to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. How are you going this morning? Or
Thank
I
you
guess
so
it's
much.
afternoon. Sorry.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me
Awesome.
on.
Now,
Yeah.
Natasha, do you mind maybe getting started by introducing yourself, giving us kind of a little rundown of who you are and what we're going to be chatting about today?
Oh, okay. Well, hello, everybody. Much light and love to all out there and all zodiac signs. My name's Natasha Weber, aka Astrotash, I guess. I'm a professional astrologer. I have been an astrologer for over 2 decades, which is massive. I'm the astrologer for Mamma Mia, so I write a weekly column there, a podcast host, and also I write some articles for news.com.au. I've got a regular spot on Kiss FM where I do live readings, and gosh, I guess I keep really busy.
Yes, yeah, it sounds like it. So, how
Yeah.
did you get into astrology? What was that journey like basically for you?
Yeah, it was really intense actually,
Okay.
because astrology, believe it or not, was my third career.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm very old. I got to a point in my life, I had my first child. And I thought to myself, okay, it's time for a sea change. I want to study something. I need to use my brain because my other two careers were really, I was a ballet dancer and that was using the physical body. And so I thought it was time to sort of kick the brain into gear. So I thought I'll study something. But the one thing that I was really adamant about was studying something that I was passionate about. So I was tossing up between astrology, psychology, and naturopathy.
Okay.
And I was praying to the universe to show me a sign.
Yeah.
And I ended up at Channel 10 doing a little segment there, kind of related to my last career. And the beautiful Karen Morgold was in the green room. And I don't know if people out there remember Karen, but she had the golden hair and the angelic voice. She was on Good Morning Australia a lot with Bert Newton. And so she was there and she ended up putting me onto the school that I started with, which was it's a bit of a mouthful, the Australian Academy of Astrology and Cosmobiology. So I started there. I started with a 3-year study. And then I moved on to their senior research group for 15 years before I started
Oh, wow.
Astrotash. Yeah.
Wow. So a big journey for you. That's awesome.
Yes.
Um, Basically, like, do you mind getting into what astrology is? Because I think we all have bits and
Mm.
pieces of this, we all know the zodiac signs, we all know the stars and all of that, but what exactly is astrology for the people out there that don't have, I guess, a definition or a good understanding of what it is?
And that's such a great question because it's so important to fall back into the basics. I think we
Mm,
lose sight of those.
yeah.
So, astrology is the study of the planets and the zodiac and their relationship to mankind here on
Okay.
Earth.
Hmm.
But it always begins with a birth chart. So, a birth chart is a moment in time and space that is calculated. It's very specifically calculated according to the latitude and the longitude. So, that can be applied to a person's birth chart.
Okay.
So, it shows their moment of birth, assuming that they're in the center of a wheel, which is a circle, basically, looking up at the heavens at their exact moment of birth. And then the chart will show every single planet in their respective zodiac sign. And then there's the mathematical relationship that everything makes to each other. And how we interpret that is basically astrology. So it all starts and ends really with a birth chart. And a birth chart can be calculated for a country as well, or an event.
Okay. All right. And
Yeah.
is this study of astrology and what you I guess expert in, is it kind of a worldwide thing where, you go to school in Canada or you go in Australia or wherever you're from? Is it kind of the same
Mm.
study everywhere?
Well, yes, if you're studying the same school of astrology. So I
Yeah.
guess what I get asked a lot is
Mm,
like the astrology that is happening in Australia, for example, is that the
yeah.
same astrology that's happening for Canada or
Yeah. Okay.
Germany?
Hmm.
So the answer is yes, it is.
Okay.
So, for example, if we've got a full moon in Aries, the
Yeah.
whole world has a full moon in Aries, but it'll
Right.
just change a little bit. The date will change a bit because of the time zone difference. That's all. But it's the
Yeah.
same thing that's happening at that moment of time and space.
Right.
But I also just want to address that there are different schools of astrology. So while I'm an expert in Western astrology that uses the tropical zodiac, which is the most common form of astrology, there are also some other amazing astrological schools of thought and studies. So that is this is getting maybe a little bit technical, but we've got Vedic astrology that
Okay.
deals with more in the constellations, whereas
Hmm.
Western astrology is based in the seasons.
Right.
And yeah, there are other various schools of astrology, like Chinese astrology as well.
Hmm.
So I think that they all have something so valuable to offer, and it's a matter of layering them up. But if I had 10 different lifetimes, I would be an expert in all of them and study
Yeah.
all of them. But it's quite an intricate subject to study. So I'm
Yeah.
sticking to the Western for now.
Awesome, awesome. Now, what are the zodiacs? Do you mind maybe getting into them? You don't need to maybe go into every single one of them, but what are the zodiac signs? And maybe if you don't mind getting into like a quick rundown of them all, because I know that's
Oh,
such a big
sure.
part of astrology. So, myself, I'm a Pisces. I don't really know much other ones. Like I don't know all of them, right? So, what are the zodiacs? And yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure, we can have a quick run through of some
Yeah.
key words and some key phrases for each zodiac sign. So there are 12 zodiac signs.
Okay.
They are all based in the constellations.
Okay.
So the constellations then relate back to Roman and Greek mythology. And they
Hmm.
have beautiful, amazing, well, some not so beautiful. Some are quite gruesome, actually, and violent, the
Oh.
stories around the
Oh
constellations and
wow.
how they
Okay.
came to be.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, but now we don't so much, take the mythology into
Yeah.
consideration, but it definitely gives a more holistic spin on the signs. But I won't go into that today.
Yeah.
But basically, we start with Aries and it ends with Pisces. So, being a
Okay.
Pisces, you're the last sign of the
Okay.
zodiac, but we'll get to you then. So, Aries is a fire sign based in the
Okay.
constellation of the Ram. So,
Hmm.
Aries is also ruled by Mars. And
Okay.
the rams are known to be somewhat impatient and
Yeah.
hasty and impulsive. That's kind of more of the shadow side of Aries.
Hmm.
Whereas the lighter side is that Aries are super dynamic. They really go for what they want and they generally tend to be quite confident. They
Yeah.
like to be number one because it is the first
Yeah.
sign of the zodiac. And
Okay.
I will just say that every single sign
Yeah.
has I don't like to use the words positive and negative. I say
Hmm.
light and shadow, but
Yeah.
kind of means the same thing.
Yeah.
um, and it's really up to free will as to
Okay.
how we use what we're given in our chart.
Right.
And in our chart, when I'm talking about Aries and Pisces and so on, the 12 signs of the zodiac, we're assuming that we're talking about the sun signs, right?
Yeah.
What sign are you? You'll say you're a Pisces. That is actually just your sun sign. But it's important to keep in mind that you also have a moon sign, which represents
Okay.
your emotional landscape. You
Hmm.
have a Venus sign, and that represents your your love style, your love language, what you might look for in a partner.
Okay.
Something to do with money as well there with your Venus sign. Mars is how we assert ourselves. Mercury is how we communicate and our intellect and our mindset. So there are lots of different layers to this, right?
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So back to the 12 signs of the zodiac. So we've got Taurus up next as the
Mm.
second sign of the zodiac. It's an earth sign ruled by Venus. So
Wow. Okay.
Taurians are really fantastic with money, actually, because as I mentioned, Venus is connected with finances there. But Venus is also the planet of love and relationships. So Taurians tend to be really sensual. They love a good massage. They love the finer things in life, because they're sensory. So beautiful smells, lovely things to touch, beautiful fabrics, aesthetic beauty. And they
Yeah.
often tend to be quite beautiful themselves. So particularly if you've got a Taurus rising,
Mm.
and the rising sign represents your appearance as well as other things. The rising sign is very much a part of who you are, but it's more the outer layer of who you are. So how other people perceive you, what they might the first impression, if you like. So that is Taurus. I mean, I'm really scooting through these really
Oh
fast,
no,
but
I love it. I love it. Yeah, you're going into like lots of detail, which is great because there's so much to think
that's
about,
good.
right? Like when you're going into all of this, and like you mentioned before, like it's what you take from all of it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's talk about, we've talked about all the beautiful things about Taurines. Oh, I was going to say as well, um, people with Taurus rising are often models or actresses
Okay.
because they're often quite, physically appealing. The
Mm.
shadow side to Taurus is that they can be stubborn. That's quite commonly known.
Yeah.
They are the sign of the bull, based in the
Yeah.
bull constellation, but also tend to be quite lazy. They'll be quite
Mm.
happy to sit there with their gorgeous plate of comfort food and their fine wine and sit and sit, and
Right.
nothing wrong with that.
No.
Nothing wrong with that. But I guess it's just all about finding a healthy balance, right?
Mm.
So Taurians sometimes can struggle to find motivation to move
Okay.
in their shadow side. But as I
Right.
mentioned, it's very much to do with free will.
Yeah.
So, you know. All right. So the next up is Gemini, the third sign of the zodiac. Gemini is an air sign, which means it's super cerebral, very much living in the mind. So
Mm.
Geminis love to connect and to communicate. They're super smart, but the shadow side of a Gemini is that they might dart from one subject to another and have trouble with follow through and sticking to things.
Mm.
That can include relationships sometimes.
Yeah.
And Geminis, they're quite flirty and flighty, so they don't necessarily love commitment. But that said, if you're a Gemini sun, like myself,
Yeah.
and you've got a Taurian moon sign, then you will most likely be very loyal in relationships because the
Okay.
moon is more to do with relationships than your sun sign.
Ah,
Right. So there
okay.
are layers. Yes. So that is a little bit about the shadow and the positive. So the constellation for Gemini are the
Mm.
twins.
Okay.
And moving right along to Cancer. Cancer is a water sign, and water
Ah,
signs are emotive. They are deep
right.
feeling
Yeah.
and sensitive. Cancer is the constellation of the crab, and they are very family orientated. So will do anything, go above and beyond for their loved ones. I think one of the misconceptions about Cancer is because they're a water sign and because they're so sensitive that they're a pushover or that they're
Mm.
weak.
Mm.
And that is absolutely incorrect because
Okay.
Cancer is also a cardinal sign. Now,
Right.
these are the qualities. So we've got the elements, mentioning the elements, the
Mm.
fire, the earth, the air, and the water for every sign. But there's also something called the qualities, and that is cardinal, fixed, mutable. And every sign will belong to one of these, and it just gives another layer.
Mm.
So the cardinal signs are pretty resilient and they're tough and
Okay.
strong. and they really are a force to be reckoned with. So Cancer belongs to a cardinal sign.
Okay.
So while it is sensitive and all, mushy on the inside, let's not forget it's still got that hard crab shell on the
Yeah.
outside. And that can sometimes be really difficult to penetrate with a Cancer. It's hard to get to know them. Once you're in their inner circle, you're there for life, and they'll love you, deeply and intensely and profoundly. But cracking that shell can be a challenge. Another thing about Cancer is that they are amazing entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Yes, for
Okay.
their own small business. So they're very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
they've got this
interesting.
inner strength
Yeah.
to them. So moving to Leo,
Yeah.
I love Leos. I'm a little obsessed with them. I tend to collect them in my life.
Okay.
And I mean, really, it's actually not of my doing. It's the stars and the universe and the cosmos have seen to
Yeah.
this, because both my children are Leos.
Okay.
My dog, who I always thought, when I get a dog, I'm going to call it Leo Luna
Leo.
after my
Yeah.
moon sign, because I do have
Okay.
a moon in Leo.
Yeah.
And Leo Luna arrived, and he happens to be a Leo as
Oh,
well.
wow. Okay.
And my boyfriend has a Leo moon as well. And all
Okay.
my besties throughout my life have been Leos, Leo sun
Ah,
signs
that's so
specifically.
interesting. Okay.
It's really interesting, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. And Leos are fabulous, let's face it.
Yeah.
So they're a fire sign like
Mhm.
Aries. They're the second
Okay.
fire sign. They belong to the fifth house of creativity and children. So they're
Mm.
exceptionally good with children. They are very creative, and this is something a little less known about Leos. So they
Mm.
have this incredible creative fire. Something else about Leos is that they're theatrical,
Yeah.
which is brilliant. I mean, we find a lot of Leo actresses and actors,
Okay.
and that's wonderful if it's channeled correctly. But
Mm.
sometimes in the shadow side, a Leo can be a little overly dramatic and overly
Mm.
reactive,
Mm.
and that's where maybe they get that reputation for demanding the center of attention and the
Okay.
limelight.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, I think Leos are a little misunderstood, because they're known to be a confident sign. Being a
Mm.
fire sign, that is quite understandable. But sometimes Leos can be super shy, and I find that people are either one Leo or another. They're either the super confident Leo, or they're the really shy Leo,
Mm.
particularly in childhood. And this is because a lot of the qualities to the star signs are kind of, cookie cutter qualities in
Mm.
the way that we understand them. So just because a sign is associated with communication, let's say, doesn't mean that they're natural born communicators. And
Right.
just because a sign like Leo is associated with confidence doesn't mean that they're born uber confident.
Mm.
It means that that is a theme that sign is going to experience in their life, and that they might have to really work on that. So they might be born as a shy Leo, but find that over time they're really cultivating their confidence and
Mm.
stepping into that confidence and becoming that empowered Leo that they're always destined to be,
Right. Okay.
if that makes sense. And of course, Leo is connected to the Lion constellation. Next we have Virgo. So we're halfway through after
Okay.
Virgo. Virgo is an earth sign connected to the constellation of the Virgin or the Maiden.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a beautiful mythology about Persephone, who gets stolen into the underworld, and then she
Okay.
kind of steps into her power, and her sexual power. So that is the Virgo constellation.
Right.
Now, Virgos can be super hard on themselves, and they can
Okay.
be really, really critical.
Mm.
And this can flow over to other people as well. They can be
Yeah.
critical of others, their
Mm.
partners and their friends and family, and they can be judgmental in their shadow.
Yeah.
But this can turn on themselves too. So
Okay.
Virgos need to be reminded to go easy on yourself, be kind. And this kind of is born out of being a perfectionist and
Mm.
wanting everything to be methodically in order, organized, and structured. And that's, I really admire Virgos for that.
Yeah.
And they're also very clever. They're ruled by Mercury.
Right.
So very intellectual and super smart. And however, they need to, just let go and let flow a little bit more if
Mm.
they step into that shadow and
Okay.
want everything to be perfect. Because while it's fantastic to strive towards that, we all know that life presents us with messy situations
Mm.
sometimes, and Virgos can sometimes struggle to navigate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm.
So that is Virgo. Next up, we have Libra. Libra, again, is an air sign. So again, intelligent, ruled by Venus and connected to the constellation of the scales. So always looking to find balance. Peace, love, and harmony is Libra's mantra.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So that's really important in terms of their relationships as well. And I think Libra is the sign that is that is best paired up with its own sign. So Libra and Libra together
Mm.
is compatibility on fire, because
Okay.
they're really both seeking the other half to their
Ah,
existence, if you
yeah.
like. And it works well. They work
Okay.
really well together. But that said, in the shadow, Libra can kind of crave partnership,
Mm.
and sometimes that's healthy and sometimes that is not. So sometimes I think it's the Libran journey to find oneself before finding the perfect partner. But I
Mm.
think the Libran won't rest until they've really found their soulmate.
Okay.
Yeah. And they can be very romantic because, of course, ruled by Venus, that
Yeah.
gives them that sense of romance. They're also beautiful, not just beautiful to look at, but
Mm.
beautiful mind, a
Yeah.
beautiful mindset, just a beautiful way about them. Librans are the epitome of style, so they've often got the
Oh.
most amazing fashion sense. Throw something on and
Yeah.
just look amazing,
Yeah.
and they have beautiful taste. And Librans are artsy as well, but not in
Mm.
kind of an arts and crafts way, more so in a fine art way. They have a
Mm.
real keen eye for beauty in aesthetics, so that flows onto, appreciating fine art.
Mm.
And again, Venus will influence their taste in food and wine, and it is quite exquisite. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So that's Libra. I'm trying to, as I'm speaking, I'm trying to think, have I covered everything? Because I'm sure I've forgotten some of the planetary rulers. For Gemini's ruled by Mercury, Cancer's ruled by the moon. So there's a
Mm.
really strong connection to the mother there, because the moon represents the
Oh.
mother. So
Okay.
I find that people with Cancer strong in their chart often have not necessarily, sometimes a great relationship with the mother, sometimes a troubled relationship with the
Mm.
mother.
Mm.
It's a theme in the life that
Okay.
needs to be worked towards. Leo's ruled by the sun. So this
Okay.
is what, gives that kind of magnetic presence that the Leo, the
Mm.
lion, has. And I mentioned Virgo being ruled by Mercury. So I just
Mm.
backtracked a little bit there. Sorry. Right. Next up, we have Scorpio, the
Yeah.
eighth sign of the zodiac,
Uh-huh.
connected to the Scorpion constellation. Back in ancient times, Scorpio was actually connected to the phoenix, which I find interesting, because a
Mm.
phoenix burns and then rises by the ashes, goes up in
Mm.
flames and then rises from the ashes. And this is very much what a Scorpio is capable of doing. It's connected
Mm.
with rebirth and regeneration.
Mm.
So a Scorpio can come back from just about any situation and reinvent themselves and
Mm.
grow. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger could be
Mm.
applied to a Scorpio life. But, here again, Scorpio gets a really, carries a pretty fearsome reputation. Scorpios are known for being jealous, vindictive, all around the evil guys of the zodiac. And I want to defend Scorpios a little
Yeah.
bit here, because sure, okay, they might have the potential to do that. Yes, let's be real, they
Mm.
do. But
Yeah.
that is again in its shadow, in their
Mm-hmm.
shadow.
Yeah.
And it's because the Scorpio has such a profound depth of emotion and
Right.
such an incredible ability to feel love and passion. It's the sign of passion. And
Okay.
if you've got, it's like two sides of the same coin, they have to
Mm.
be equal. So the greater your depth of feeling, then the
Yeah.
greater the potential for those feelings to go AWOL, if you like. So
Right.
if a
Okay.
Scorpion can channel their energy and their choices and their decisions wisely and manage those feelings, then they're just capable of amazing things. And I love to
Right.
see a bit of Scorpio in a chart because, and in fact, I get a lot of people coming to me who are Scorpios because they love to dig beneath the surface. So astrology is
Mm.
something that appeals. They love to know what's behind the veil. So they're often very spiritually inclined, and
Right.
they're not afraid to confront their shadow side. They're
Mm.
not afraid to do the shadow work. They're not afraid
Okay.
of, looking within and at the ugliness that lies within us all, right?
Mm.
Because we're not all perfect beacons of
No,
light.
yeah.
And it's really important that we acknowledge all parts of ourselves
Mm.
in order to grow
Absolutely.
and self-love, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. So that's Scorpio, ruled by Mars and Pluto. So
Mm.
these are the traditional and the modern planets together. Some
Yeah.
signs have two planetary rulers. I
Right.
won't go
Okay.
into the meanings of the traditional and the modern, but
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty much what it sounds
Okay.
like. So again, Mars, I mentioned a little bit about Mars with Aries, but Mars is feisty. It gives
Yeah.
that dynamic type of energy. And then Pluto is about the depth and the
Right.
passion and
Right.
and and the underworld, actually.
Mm.
So these planets belong with Scorpio.
Okay.
Next up, we have Sagittarius, the truth seeker of the zodiac, the centaur, the archer. Sagittarius is very much about standing up for what it believes in. It's the ninth sign of the zodiac, so it's connected with higher learning and education and the wisdom that comes from that. So not necessarily talking about your everyday studies, but like, learning from the school of life. And
Mm.
then Sagittarius's mission is often to teach what he or she or that person has learnt throughout its journey, particularly
Right.
when a Sagittarian gets to the age of 50.
Okay.
And yes, so Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is my favorite planet in the zodiac because
Is
Jupiter
it?
is, oh yeah, Jupiter's
Okay.
it's the big one,
Yeah.
and it likes to be loud and proud and positive. So
Yeah.
Saggies are generally optimistic. They're often comedians.
Okay.
Hughesy's a Saggy. I don't
Hmm.
know, Hughesy, David Hughes. He's
Yes.
a
Yep.
Sagittarian,
Oh,
and
is he?
he's a
Okay.
yeah, he's a fabulous comedian. So,
Yeah.
because Sagittarius has that incredible sense of humor,
Right.
will see the witty side to pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I guess in its shadow side, and we have to mention this as well with such a
Hmm.
beautiful benefic planet like Jupiter,
Yeah.
is that Sag can have the tendency to go a little bit overboard.
Okay.
So we need to pull back sometimes. If you're a
Hmm.
Sagittarius, just knowing where the boundaries are,
Yeah.
and yes, and just pulling back, not too much of a good thing, Saggies.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right. So next up, we have Capricorn ruling the 10th house and the zenith of a birth chart. So a super powerful sign. That said, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is the tough taskmaster of the zodiac. So Capricorns are very hardworking. They're ambitious,
Okay.
but they can be late bloomers. So
Hmm.
if you're a Capricorn out there and you're feeling a little frustrated, well, first of all, you've had Pluto in your sign for years, so that's
Yeah.
understandable, but it's moving out next year. So yay for
Okay.
Capricorns.
Hmm.
But yes, they can be also very hard on themselves with that
Hmm.
Saturnian influence, and that can be a dampener. So Capricorns need to find the lighter side of life and learn to lighten up a little bit and not be all work and no play.
Right.
right? But that said, they're usually very successful, but it might just come a little later in life. And they're very good with
Mm.
business,
Okay.
with large organizations.
Yeah.
They are kind of a practical, no fuss sign.
Hmm.
They're not really into the frills and the romance of life,
Yeah.
but it depends on the rest of the chart, of course, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they like to be, they're kind of straight shooters, as are Sagittarians.
Right.
So yeah, not too much fluff and frills for the
Yeah.
Capricorns, but they have an incredible ability to focus and buckle down, and they're
Hmm.
realists, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So second last is the Aquarians.
Yeah.
This is the 11th sign of the zodiac and very much related to friendships and social groups. Aquarians love to connect with friends and with different types of communities and people from all walks of life. Because one thing Aquarians like to do is mix it up.
Yeah.
They do not subscribe to the status quo. They are
Hmm.
often the black sheep of the family. So they do
Okay.
like to stand out from the crowd. And it's not really an attention seeking thing, but it's more about that's really authentically who they are at their core.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if an Aquarian is born into a very traditional type of family,
Mm.
this can be difficult for them in childhood because,
Okay.
they might want to spread their wings and be uniquely themselves. And my
Yeah.
advice to Aquarians out there is, yes, your destiny is to be radically you,
Yeah.
ruled by the unpredictable planet that likes to shake things up, Uranus.
Okay.
And yes, I did say Uranus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Aquarians, they might have the purple streak in the hair, and this is how they express their unique personalities, and they
Mm.
love diversity,
Yeah.
and they love to mix things up. So they're also an air sign, so Aquarians are highly intelligent, probably the most intelligent sign of the zodiac. Libra and Gemini are in there as well.
Mm.
But Aquarians can really see problems from such a unique perspective. And they have almost a futuristic type of vibe about them as well. So they're very techie, often work in technology or in science. And yeah,
Okay.
they're clever cookies.
Okay.
And it's the water bearer of the zodiac, so connected to
Right.
the water bearer
Okay.
constellation.
Okay.
Yes. And lastly, you've been very patient, Jordan.
I love it. I love it. No, because again, like I think we all know the names and whatnot, and maybe a little bit about it, but there's so much in relation to all of this, right? So I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and different astrologers are going to have their different
Mm.
perspectives
Hmm.
on the zodiac signs. I've been writing an astrology book for the last several years,
Okay.
and it's going to be coming out at the end of next year.
Awesome. Okay.
But to be honest, look, I was a bit frustrated with myself because it took so long. But in all honesty, I'm so glad that it is being finished when it's being finished, because I have even gathered perspectives and
Mm.
information
Hmm.
just from my own musings
Yeah.
about the zodiac signs just
Yeah.
fairly recently, because we're always learning in astrology, and there are
Hmm.
always new fresh insights and different ways to look at old things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and astrology is old. I mean, it dates back to Babylonian times.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
very old. All right, now Pisces. So Pisces is the 12th and final sign of the
Hmm.
zodiac. So
Okay.
often Pisces are connected with a spiritual path.
Uh-huh.
Some astrologers believe that Pisces are here on Earth living their final lifetime.
Mm.
So there's a lot of lessons to
Yeah.
accumulate and to master before moving into, the cloudy
Hmm.
realm, I
Yeah.
suppose. Pisces is the constellation of the fish.
Okay.
And I think that with the fish, sometimes we get two types of Pisces, a little bit like Leo, because one fish swims in one direction and the other fish swims in the opposite direction. So
Mm.
one fish is swimming with the current and the other fish might be swimming against the current.
Right.
And
Okay.
so there's a duality there. And are you one fish swimming with the current, or are you
Hmm.
always swimming against the current? Or is your life a little bit of a mix of both? And
Mm.
sometimes it might feel like that for Pisceans.
Yeah.
Pisces is ruled by Neptune, and Neptune is the spiritual planet.
Okay.
But that said, the shadow side of this can be confusion, a fogginess. Neptune itself is so kind of surrounded by fog, and this
Mm.
can be a Neptunian experience and be merged with these Pisces qualities. But also in the lighter side, there's a beautiful dreaminess about
Right.
Pisceans. So they're the
Yeah.
dreamers of the zodiac, and the world needs more dreamers, right? It needs
Right.
more
Yeah.
artists and dreamers and
Mm-hmm.
musicians and visionaries.
Yeah.
So Pisces has an incredible artistic vision, and they are often artsy in
Mm-hmm.
maybe in a like a macrame, make a dream catcher type of a way, or
Yeah.
maybe they're creating beautiful music.
Mm-hmm.
Anything goes. I
Anything.
mean, they
Okay.
are super talented, really
Mm-hmm.
talented. It's important though, if you're a talented Pisces out there, and I'm sure there are a few listening, um, the struggle can be to ground your dreams and to actually
Okay.
monetize them, because we do live in
Mm.
a real world, and
Yeah.
sometimes Pisces can struggle to do that.
Yeah.
So I think, you'd be looking at the rest of your chart and trying
Mm.
to maximize wherever there's any earth in the
Yeah.
chart, to try and channel and hone into that so that you can be abundant and be financially independent, so
Mm.
you can put your dreams out there in a bigger
Yeah.
and better way, and the world can see your work, because Pisces really should be seen by the world, because the poetry and I mean, I'm a fan.
Yeah. Yeah. I am
Yes.
too. Yeah. Being a Pisces.
Yeah. Yes. So I think also with Pisces is in terms of relationships, they can be so self-sacrificing. They're
Mm.
so caring. We sometimes find nurses and people in caretaking industries
Mhm.
being the Pisceans.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, but they need to make sure they've got enough in reserve for themselves to,
Mm.
what's the saying? You can't draw water from an empty well.
Mm.
And Pisces would be very wise to remember this, to
Yeah.
continue to fill their own cup so that then they can continue to give to others with their big, beautiful hearts.
Right.
But in the shadow, if they get into a relationship with an energy vampire or a
Mhm.
Svengalis,
Okay.
Svengali type of character,
Mhm.
or just energy sappers
Yeah.
or victim types. This is
Mm.
something that Pisceans can really attract
Yeah.
into their life, and it's important to be aware of that, and this is just about, and I really believe that whatever challenges we're given in our chart, we can overcome them to actually be stronger and better people,
Mm.
and develop real strengths in those areas. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're a Pisces and you find yourself in and out of relationships that are just not meeting the mark and are leaving you dry and underwhelmed and disappointed, and I don't even think I'm thinking of the right word here,
Mm.
but heartbroken too.
Yeah.
Heartbroken really maybe is the right word.
Mm.
Then it's about reclaiming your power. It's about filling your cup, and it's very much about setting boundaries in the real world. Setting
Right.
boundaries
Okay.
that protect yourself in all types of relationships. So that's
Mm.
romantic relationships and also business partnerships as well.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself and to stand up for yourself, because the other side of that is that beautiful, caring soul that just wants to save the world,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing with Pisceans is they're sensitive physically
Okay.
as well as emotionally. So important to, just to be aware of that,
Mm.
and can be prone to escapism.
Mm.
So stay
Mhm.
in your creativity
Mm.
And that might require you to, escape off to La La Land in order
Yeah.
to create at your best. And that's fine and beautiful, but then you need to come back to earth and plant the feet on the ground.
Right.
And Pisceans need to be careful with alcohol, drugs, anything addictive, because
Mm.
they can be prone to that. But yes, that said, Pisceans are just beautiful dreamers and visionaries, sensitive, caring. The world needs more Pisces energy.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome breakdown of it all because like you were saying, like it goes back to ancient times, right? So there's so much to think about and there's so much, involved in all of this. But I know you do give out weekly horoscopes and things like that. So how do those come into play? Like how do horoscopes for all of these zodiac signs come into play? And do they last forever? How do people such as yourself create these horoscopes for people and for these
Yes.
zodiac signs?
Well, I'd be giving away the secrets of the trade then, wouldn't I? All right, let me give you some good pointers. So
Mm,
firstly, my hot tip for reading your weekly or monthly or
yeah,
annual horoscopes,
yeah.
if it's a horoscope and you know your rising sign, which is dependent on your time of birth, not your
Mm-hmm,
date, which
mm-hmm.
is relating to the sun sign, then
Okay.
read your horoscope for your rising sign.
Right.
And the
Okay.
reason I say that is because it will just give you a much more accurate prediction for
Mm,
you personally, because it will align better with your birth chart. And that
right.
is
Okay.
like your astrological or your cosmic fingerprint.
Mm,
But if you don't know your rising sign, then do read for your sun sign. But
yeah.
keeping in mind that, yes, it's general, it's very generalized. We are categorizing the entire population into only 12 categories. And of course, not the same thing is going to be happening for every single Gemini on the planet and every single Pisces on the planet and so on. So, with the horoscopes, how I write them is I will choose the most significant, what I interpret as the most significant astrological event of that
Okay.
week, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, for that particular sign.
Okay.
But let's say it's Venus moving into Aries, then obviously that's going to be important for Aries,
Mm-hmm.
and I will interpret it according to that sign.
Right.
However, when I get to Taurus, Venus will in Aries will be affecting Taurus's 12th house. So it's going to have a
Okay.
different flavor or a different impact, if you
Mm,
like,
mm-hmm.
um, than it would for an Aries. So the
Right.
same astrological event is happening, but it's going to be slightly different and
Yeah.
affect different areas of life for different signs. So
Right.
I hope that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, but if you read for your rising sign, it's more of a personal prediction.
Right.
But if you
Okay.
read for your sun sign, it's still inspirational because let's face
Mm,
it, the sun is the center of our zodiac,
yeah.
center of our solar system, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
center of our solar system, and all of the planets answer to the gravitational force of the sun. So it
Right.
is potent, it is important, and it
Yeah.
is influential.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Now, when you talk about like attraction and when you talk about, certain zodiac signs maybe attracting one another or yourself, for example, you're saying your sons are Leos, your dog's a Leo, and all of that. Is that
Yeah.
quite common? Are there certain zodiac signs that usually attract one another or that see themselves around others? Is that a common occurrence usually?
Yes, I mean
Okay.
compatibility is a big deal with
Okay.
astrology,
Hmm.
and even beyond romantic compatibility,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is based on the math. I mean, how unromantic is that? But that's true.
Yeah.
It's based on the mathematics and the
Okay.
mathematical distance between the signs,
Okay.
and that is also connected to the elements. So, a
Hmm.
really easy way of talking about compatibility is to say that all signs from the same element
Yeah.
are most compatible. So, fire signs with
Right.
fire signs, air signs with air
Hmm.
signs, and
Right.
so on. So,
Okay.
for people out there that maybe don't know, so the fire signs are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius.
Right. Okay.
And the earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn.
Okay.
The air signs, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. And
Hmm.
the water signs are Cancer, oh my gosh, Pisces, and who's in the middle there? I'm forgetting someone. Water, water, water. It'll come to me. Like, I'm so sorry.
That's all
I'm
right.
having a little water. I'm having a water sign moment right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scorpio, of course.
Right.
Scorpio. Sorry, Scorpio. Right. So Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, water
Mm,
signs. So these signs in their own little groupings really just resonate well with each
mm,
other. The energy flows easily, and there's very little friction.
right.
So that
Okay.
is determined its compatibility. But then there are some other signs, other elements that kind of blend well as well. So I
Huh.
quite like fire with air
Okay.
and earth signs with water signs.
Hmm.
But then if you start to, on the other side, on the other hand, when you're combining signs like earth and air and
Mm-hmm.
fire and water, then
Mm-hmm.
there can be, the opposite of compatibility.
Right.
There can
Right.
be
Yep.
tension and
Mm-hmm.
clashes. And
Yep.
we think, God, I just don't like that person. That person just doesn't get me.
Mm,
And it
mm-hmm.
can be that. But I want to say, again, this is beyond the sun signs because the sun sign represents a basic character. So, of
Yeah.
course, you want that to be compatible. But let's
Mm-hmm.
say you're dating and you want to find, a perfect match in
Mm-hmm.
love. So then, even more important than the sun sign would be to look at the moon sign compatibility between the two
Okay.
of you, because the
Okay.
moon rules our emotions and our feelings, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really important in a
Mm-hmm.
relationship,
Yeah.
more important than our characters. So that's important that the moon signs are in harmony.
Right.
And then we've got the Venus signs, which represents our love language
Okay.
and what we look for in a partner and the type of partner we ourselves are, how we
Mm.
show up in a romantic relationship. And
Yeah.
so having the Venus signs connecting well is really important.
Mm.
And then the same goes for the Mars sign because Mars rules sex and
Mm.
attraction.
Yeah.
So if you're in a sexual relationship with someone, you want your
Mm-hmm.
Mars signs to be bouncing off the walls,
Yeah.
ideally.
Yeah. Yeah.
That said, oh, and then of course, let's not forget Mercury because Mercury is all about how we communicate, and that is the
Right.
cornerstone of a healthy
Mm.
relationship, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are so many dynamics at play, and you're not going to have everything being compatible. And let's face it, no relationship is perfect, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So don't expect that. Don't worry if everything's not compatible in your chart and your, spouse's chart.
Yep.
But you want to have some strengths in there, some underlying
Exactly.
strengths.
Exactly. You don't
Yes.
want it all to be friction.
No, but that said, I think also it's really important, and well, I don't know if it's important, but
Hmm.
it turns out to be because we are drawn to people that sometimes offer us balance,
Yeah.
offer us what we lack in our chart. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're lacking, like I lack earth, I'm all
Yeah.
fire and air. So I'm
Yeah.
all in my head and inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
but that can burn out really quickly.
Right.
So I have found, and even doing this intuitively, you don't even have to know about astrology. But once I learnt about astrology and reflected back on my chart with my ex-husband's chart, I saw the balance there. He had
Mm.
predominantly earth, everything that I lacked, he had.
Yeah.
It didn't work out, and that was for other reasons, but
Mm. Yeah.
there was other things happening in there. But just to illustrate how important the balance is and also
Mm.
how important the challenges are, and they really
Exactly.
are, because
Mm-hmm.
every relationship comes with a lesson, I believe. And
Mm.
this is going a little bit beyond astrology and more into spiritual growth, but
Mm.
astrology supports that
Yep.
with the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
Awesome.
don't be afraid of finding challenges
Yeah.
in your chart,
Mm-hmm.
connected to your lover's chart, because
Mm-hmm.
they're important lessons that the two of you need to flesh out together in
Exactly.
this
It's like any
lifetime.
challenge in life, right? You don't want it all to be smooth sailing. It builds character, and I think it goes the same with relationships. Now
Yes,
you give out weekly horoscopes. Is that correct, Natasha?
I
Do you
do.
mind do you
Yeah.
mind letting everybody know where they can find them, your Instagram? I know you were mentioning in the beginning you're on the radio and on TV all the time. So maybe if you don't mind plugging in all of your socials, that would be great for all of the listeners.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So they can find me, people can find me on Instagram at Astrotash, and I kind of live there. So I'm on my Insta page way too much, but
Okay.
I do enjoy connecting with my beautiful, I've got a beautiful community there, really
Awesome. Yeah.
supportive,
Mm-hmm.
light and love community. Yes. I'm on Facebook
Mm-hmm.
also
Okay.
at Astrotash as well. I'll admit I'm not on there as much.
Okay. Yeah.
And yes, and then my website is probably a good little hub. I
Okay.
have a blog there as well if
Mm-hmm.
anyone is sort of interested in reading things all in one place. I do also post, as well as the weekly horoscopes, I do also
Mm-hmm.
post a full new and full moon blog with
Okay.
world times as well. So the
Mm-hmm.
peak time of the full moon in Australia, in Sydney, Perth, also Los Angeles, New York,
Okay.
and some other places as well, just so that people can know exactly when that's all happening with the
Awesome.
astrological interpretation. So my website is www.astrotash.com. Super simple.
Okay. Awesome. Alrighty. Thank you for that. And everybody, be sure to go subscribe. I know Natasha was mentioning she has a book coming out next year as well. So I'm assuming you'll post that on your socials and your
I
website. So,
will.
be sure to check all of that out. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was awesome. I think it was really good delving into, the all of the complexity of everything, right? There's so much to think about. And I think people think it's quite a simple, a simple thing, which it's not. So it's quite eye-opening for someone like yourself, an expert, to come on and chat about these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed having a chat with you, Jordan. Thanks.
Awesome. Alrighty, thank you everybody for listening in to today's episode, and thank you once again to Natasha for being on the episode and sharing her amazing knowledge through this subject. Now, once again, if you could all head to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, and click that 5-star review button, it really helps out the podcast, and it only takes a couple seconds, of course. This season, once again, is locked and loaded. There is so many amazing guests that are going to be coming on to this podcast. I'm also going to be sharing a few personal stories about myself. I've had a big year. I've had some health concerns, some health things, a surgery, and just kind of eye-opening experiences. And I'm going to be sharing all of those with you as well. Thank you all again for listening. I know I've said that 1,000 times, but it does mean a lot to me. I will again post all of Natasha's links in the show notes, so be sure to check all of that out. Head to her Instagram, her website. I know again she's going to be writing a book, so that will be, I think, very illuminating in the future. And I will talk to you all during the next episode. The Transparently Jordan podcast is a Radiant Voices media production. All episodes are available everywhere.
This is Radiant Voices Media.